3, 4. We're waiting for Council President. Councilmember Whitting's here. Okay. Will you let me know? No, the other one. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started. The council president will be with us shortly. Let's go ahead and start with a call to order. And clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent.
Here.
Clegg. Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodings. We have 2 absent, 4 present.
And that's enough, right? Okay. All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. Today we are attempting to get back to a work session format. We're on the daytime meeting. We spent some time hearing from staff on our more strategic initiatives that all of us are working on. So today we'll hear about parks planning, housing plans, and then climate work that's being done. And with that, I believe Jennifer Tomlinson is with us to present from the Parks Department. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to provide an overview of some of the stuff that we've been working on since December, when council approved an additional about $4.5 million for some of our major repairs and maintenance projects. And then also a couple of our capital projects that we have that are actually under construction. So I think, Amanda, do you have the presentation?
Amanda does not have the presentation.
Okay.
But you can share your screen.
Real quick.
Clerk, will you please reflect that the council president is present?
Yes, I am. Sorry for being a minute late.
That's all right.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
No. Is
No.
she set up to share? There, it's starting to share. Yep, we can see it, Jennifer.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So used to Teams meetings, it's all different in Zoom. So just real quickly, I just wanted to give you guys kind of a geographic overview over where a lot of our projects are happening. So we have them really spread out all throughout town, and we're working, a lot of the funding was dedicated to greenbelt replacement. So that's happening kind of all over the city. And then we do have kind of a gap in the West Bench this year, but that's because we have so many projects being held over from last year. So last year, we went through a couple of projects through the strategic planning contingency for new restrooms. I think we have 2 new restrooms going in the West Bench, and those have been on back order for a very long time from one of our vendors. So that's really the reason why there aren't a ton of projects over there, but we're really focusing on the Southwest, the Central Bench, and then downtown and a little bit in the Southeast. So one of our large projects that we're working on is repairing some of the stucco at the depot. Just if you can, from far away, it looks beautiful, right? Everything looks wonderful. But when you zoom in on it a little bit, you can start to see where we're having some spalling in the stucco. So we have a specialist who specializes in this kind of stucco repair that we have hired to take a look at it, come up with a plan for how to phase the improvements, because it is fairly significant, and it's especially on the tower. And the tower requires some additional equipment to get in and to get the stucco replaced up there. So we're working on that. I think we're anticipating that's probably going to be a 1 to 2 year process, just because of the intricacies in it, and because it's such a highly specialized kind of stucco that's on the depot. One of our next projects.
There.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Jennifer, remind me, I thought we did a fairly significant stucco repair on the depot not that long ago. Can comment on that? What happened?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg. So I want to say that was about 10 years ago. And I think that was only a portion of it where the fascia and the roof kind of line up. So the damage is a little bit more widespread. So we're looking at kind of doing a much larger project this time.
Thank you. Follow up if I could. I guess it's good to hear that. And I would suggest we do what we need to make sure that we don't have to do this every 10 years.
Madam Mayor, Council President Elaine, it has been so hard finding a stucco person to do this. I could not agree with you more.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Over at Esther Simplot, we've been working for the last couple of years to come up with a significant plan and investment to really address the water quality impacts that we've been having over there. So we've been working closely with Public Works. They have been working on securing an additional water right from the Boise River. So this actually, I think in about a month, we're going to start construction of a new intake from the Boise River that will go into Quinn's Pond. And then in the next winter, once the irrigation season is over, then we're going to work on kind of the ponds over at Esther Simplot. So this is really almost a 3-phase project where we have to get the water right. We got to get the new intake from the river, and then we work on the ponds over at Esther. In the meantime, we do intend to rent additional water for the summer so that hopefully we don't see the harmful algae blooms that we saw last summer that ended up keeping the ponds closed for a good bit of time. So I think we're all on the same page that dilution is the solution. So we're really doing everything we can to get that and to get the water in the ponds mixing up really well. Over at Eagle Rock, which is located in the East End, last year we started having a play camp at this particular park. And through the play camp and through the scheduling, we've realized that the restrooms and the shelter are really inadequate for the needs to have as many kids as we were having at the park. So we had originally had this scheduled for this year, but this funding allowed us to go with a different vendor for our restroom buildings and for our shelters. So we have completed tearing down the existing restroom and shelter. And then we're going to be building a new 3-stall restroom with a fairly significant amount of storage so that we can both have play camp equipment stored in there, and so that we can have our custodial staff's equipment that they usually need on site. So this one should be complete by May. We have that's our absolute deadline, because play camp starts and we're not going to have kids in porta potties because that would be awful. So I think this one's moving along pretty good. We just got the contracts, and you'll probably see these contracts before council, I think maybe in the next week or two.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
just real quick, Jennifer, about Eagle Rock, do we have any updates or dates scheduled for the planting of the bitterbrush and the sagebrush in that area? Has that been rescheduled?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I believe Martha's running that project, and I think she probably has it scheduled for later this spring once we have volunteers that are able to come back and do projects for us.
Perfect, thank you.
They have done a significant amount of planting over in the reserve. It's pretty incredible what they've been able to accomplish so far. So we have this restroom, the one on the left at Rhodes Skate Park. We have not opened this restroom since about 2015 because we've had so many issues with it. It doesn't meet any of our current design standards. And we've just basically had a porta potty that sits in the parking lot and is one of the grossest ones I think that we have in our system. So we have been trying for a few years to get this replaced with a more urban bathroom, which the Portland Loo, you can see the rendering on the right. We're actually putting one of these over at 11th and Bannock too. It'll really kind of clean up the area a good bit. And I think that building was built in like the 70s, and it really does block a lot of what's going on in the park. So this is a super exciting project because we're hoping we can get rid of one of those porta potties, the porta potty, which would be awesome. And then this is something that we can open year round, and it has a lot of like features designed for an urban area. So maintenance of it is really straightforward, and we're really excited to try it out in the system because, like I said, we don't have any so far. And now that we're developing a lot more in the urban areas, it's a really interesting model for moving forward.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about what's so great about this new toilet system, this new restroom?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez, I know isn't it fun to talk about bathrooms? But so it has a lot of, we've actually worked with police on designing this. It has a lot of features that are, that make it less interesting of a place to kind of hang out. So it's got louvers on the bottom. So you can't see it, you can't see out of it, but you can see if there's somebody in it. And then all of the fixtures are on the exterior of the building. So like the sink, and then like the hand wash station, those are all on the exterior of the building. So it's really a restroom that's designed to like get in, get out and do your business and move on with your day. So that's why we're interested in seeing how it works in this area.
Thank you.
And like I mentioned before, we are doing a number of significant greenbelt replacements. Our original FY21 budget had one section of greenbelt, and that's the section from East Park Center down to the Orange Bridge on the south side of the river. With the additional funding, we've been able to add over a mile from 9th Street to the Firefighters Memorial on the north side of the river. We're able to correct this issue that we have as a result of 2018 flooding, where the bank of the river completely eroded underneath the path. This one's out by Lake Harbor. And then really the bulk of our time is going to be spent on this 9th Street to Firefighters Memorial section. It is it's fun for kids who like riding bikes and they love bumps in pathways. It's terrible for us. It's just the tree roots have really impacted it. The last time we did this section was in 2010. And as you can see, we did it in asphalt and it's just not holding up to the trees. So there will be a series of greenbelt closures starting this spring. We're trying to schedule them based on the areas that are most prone to flooding. So those are the ones that we would do later. So this one by Lake Harbor, that one will be done later in the year. And then like this section on the north side of Ann Morrison, that'll probably be done sooner because that area is not impacted by flooding. We just don't know what the spring is going to look like with winter runoff and flows.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer, the section there by the Firefighters Memorial, there's also a restroom in that little park. Have we thought about replacing that restroom also with a Portland Loo?
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, the restroom at Riverside is actually scheduled for replacement. It's about to be demoed and we are using a CXT on that one. We needed more storage space than the Portland Loo provides. So we had to be able to build in a garage on that. That's one of our restrooms that we're still waiting on from our normal vendor.
Okay, all right, thank you. I knew it needed replaced it, so I thought I'd ask.
And then, so then I believe there was $500,000 that was listed in the new update for parking lot renovations. We have 93 parks in the system. They all have parking lots. A lot of them are asphalt. Some of them are deteriorating. So the bulk of the funding will be spent on redoing the Fort Boise Community Center. The remaining parking lot, we did the senior center side of it a few years ago, and now we're going to do the rest of it. And then we're going to be spending about $100,000 on seal coating some of our existing parking lots that aren't in the worst shape, but definitely need some attention so that we can preserve them for the long haul. Another project that we have is the shade project. So last year, when you guys approved our ability to go in and install rubber surface for a lot of our playgrounds to make them more accessible. We learned that in the summer they get kind of hot. So we took a look at the sites where we installed those, the ones that don't have significant canopy covering them, and especially Cassia because it does have a play camp. So we're looking at installing some shade features over some of the elements, the 2 to 5, this piece right here, some of the swings over here and then in this area. And the hope is that'll bring down the temperature of the whole area and make it more comfortable so that kids can use it all throughout the day instead of just in the morning and just in the evening hours. We're also looking at Camel's Back Park for this, but we still need to get a better idea of what the shade canopy looks like there from the trees. So we'll do that evaluation probably in the next month or so that we can figure out whether or not it's actually needed there. One of our biggest projects that we're working on that's like one of the coolest and most exciting, and I can't say thank you enough for giving us additional funding for this project because it's turning out to be pretty spectacular, is Molinar Park. So last year we went through the process of updating our master plan for this park because we had a lot of the amenities located on the north side of the parking lot. ACHD is redoing Maple Grove right now, so they're using a large storm swale that ended up impacting the park a little bit. So we updated the master plan and we turned this entire area into a dog park. And that has since been opened. So we did that through a neighborhood reinvestment grant last year. And I think it just opened maybe like 6 months ago. It's been really successful. The neighbors are really enjoying having a place to take their dogs to, and the turf is actually holding up to them, which is pretty exciting. And then the larger project that we're going to be working on is the splash pad and playground. So this is our first real large scale community wide, I would say, splash pad. We have facilities at we have some splash features at Bora. We have some at Cumba over in West Boise. And then we're also working to redo the Ann Morrison fountain so that it's more of an interactive feature. But this is this is like a dedicated splash pad. And it's going to be located right next to the playground. And it's really like the coolest playground ever. So it's pretty exciting. We have dueling 65-foot long zip lines that you can see back in this corner so kids can race each other, which is like the most amazing energy burner ever for small kids. We have a lot of seating area, like a shelter for parents so that they can see their kids like all over the playground. We have this spectacular tower that should be really fun. We have net climbers, spinners, and then we have some more Big O swings. And one of the other things that we were able to do on this one also is add shade because this is an area that doesn't have a lot of tree canopy since it's a newer facility. So having shade on this is going to be really important from the get-go. So the way the splash pad will be programmed is like from the end of May until probably September, we'll leave it on. It's going to be it's a system that's not going to require chemical treatment. So it'll be a lot it'll be similar to what we do with Cumba, where we have a holding tank and then the water like recirculates through. And this one we anticipate opening by Memorial Day. And then just a couple of quick capital updates. I just wanted to let you guys know that Bowler Park is under construction. They have one of the largest dirt piles that I've ever seen on any of our property. So they are clearing that out for the green space. And then one of the pretty neat things we were able to do is work with this adjoining church. So they're going to be developing this area into green space as well. And so it'll be pretty seamless, the amount of green space that is open, and it'll be a lot larger than we were intending on doing ourselves because we were really working to preserve some of the sage step kind of ecosystem that we have out there. So we were pretty strategic in where we put the green space. This will include an additional 60 trees. And I think the IBC came before you guys in November or December, but this park will be fully built out. So we're getting playground, we're getting splash pad or misters, and then we're getting like an adult gym out there as well. A skate park. It's really exciting to be able to build one out like, from start to finish. So the project manager on this one is really excited, and it's by my house. So it gets an incredible level of project management oversight as I drive by it like 12 times a day. And then that one's anticipated to be done by June.
Madam
And then-
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
Jennifer, do we have any renderings of the skate park yet?
You know, we have a layout of it. We don't have it rendered though. I could send you the layout if you'd like to see it.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
And then finally, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the 11th and Bannock site. It still doesn't have a name, but we're going to be going through a naming process here shortly. This project is a partnership between us, Raffinelli Nahas, and CCDC for construction of this urban park. The building is complete and they're working on the infrastructure right now. And this site is the receiver site for the Public Works Lander Street tree removal mitigation dollars. So with that funding, we were able to develop a pretty comprehensive silvocell system on site. And that really does allow trees just to grow so much bigger, a good bit faster, and provides way more drainage than we would have gotten otherwise. So a lot of subsurface work is going on right now. And this one I think is also supposed to be done by like June or July. And once we have a name for it identified, I believe we'll bring that back before you guys for approval. And that's all I have. So I would stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. That's very exciting. The Molinar is really cool and can't wait to see what you all come up with Bowler and of course 11th and Bannock. I'm especially excited about. It's right next to my place of employment, Idaho Power. So it's going to be a great place to utilize regularly once we all get back to working in the office. You had mentioned two restrooms were on hold. I assume one's Cottonwood Park. And what does it mean to have a restroom on back order? I don't understand that. Thanks.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Thompson, our vendor relocated their manufacturing facility actually from Washington to Nampa. And when they did that, they ended up having some significant issues in being able to set up their new shop and turn out our facilities. So usually it takes about 120 days to get one of those manufactured. And at the same time, we put in an order for like 6 restrooms. So we had a large order in. So we have been waiting. They're starting to finally roll off the assembly line right now. We just got one out at Hillside to Hollow, but Redwood and Cottonwood, they've both been bid. So they have been awarded to a contractor for installation. I think Redwood is going to probably go in first and then Cottonwood will go in after that. But they should be going in sometime, I would say like in the next 4 months at the latest.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor,
We've got the Council President Pro Tem and then you, Council President.
thank you.
No? Oh, I thought you did. Never mind. Council President, go ahead.
Thank you. Jennifer, tell us where the new master plan on Ann Morrison is. You mentioned that we're looking at doing some interactive features around the fountain. I know that that's going to be sort of a over time process, but any other improvements scheduled this year toward that master plan?
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg. So we have the fountain scheduled for this year. One project that the Morrison Foundation is working on is a donor recognition area. So that'll probably go in. We're thinking around the same time as the fountain, just because it's kind of in a similar area. And then we have had the connection from Peasley Street down into the park engineered. So we're trying to figure out what the funding is going to look like on that one. Additionally, the Morrison Foundation is working with us on relocating the clock tower and getting it like resurfaced. So I think the clock tower, I believe, is going to happen this year. And then the connection to Peasley is really going to be contingent on funding. The big project is going to be the roadways, and we don't have that currently funded yet. It's going to be a massive project. So I think we're all scratching our heads trying to figure out how to, realign a bunch of roadways in a 170-acre park. But yeah, that'll be a really significant project. Other than that, as far as like our agreement with the Morrison Foundation, Together Treasure Valley Dog Island was part of that agreement. The fountain is part of our contribution, and then they're responsible for the donor recognition and then potentially the clock tower.
Good. Sounds like we're making progress. That's great.
I think so.
And then follow up, if I could, Madam Mayor.
Of course.
I know it's been very difficult with COVID, but are we planning, when we're able, to have some kind of a celebratory concert or something at the Jean Harris Bandshell?
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, I think Doug had been working with Jody's husband, Mr. Steigers, to talk about some sort of event that we could do over there. And I think it's really just going to be contingent on our numbers for outdoor and indoor gatherings being reduced. So it would be amazing. It looks incredible. I don't know if you've been by it, but it looks wonderful. And the inside of it is just so much, it's leaps and bounds ahead of where it was. So
It's great. Well, at some point we'll be able to.
hope so.
Great. Well, it looks like we're good. Really appreciate you being here with us, Jennifer. And I saw Doug for a moment as well.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's great to get to update you guys on all the cool stuff we have going on.
Take care.
Thanks.
So next up, I believe if we're following this order, is an update from our housing initiative staff. I see Kyle Patterson. Oh, Kyle, are you going to be talking about are you covering housing?
Yes, and I'm going to really focus on the Bloomberg Harvard Innovation Track.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Kyle is helping lead up a cross-sectional team of city employees that are tasked with coming up with new ideas to address our affordable housing needs in the community. So with that, Kyle, take it away.
Madam Mayor, council members, good morning. As the mayor mentioned, I'm here today to give you some background and an update on the innovation track. And that's a Harvard Bloomberg program that we applied to and were accepted to back in November. I especially wanted to update you because we set aside $100,000 from the Housing Innovation IBC that came to you back in December to pilot one or more solutions that come out of this program. And just to make sure we're clear, I believe there was $1 million set aside in the IBC for housing innovation, and only $100,000 of that is allocated to this program. I think my colleagues in PDS will come to you in the coming weeks to talk about how we'll spend the rest of that money. So you can see on the slide a description of the program. I underlined 2 items that I think are central to this work. The first is creative ideas, right? And when we talk about complex challenges like housing affordability or climate change or inclusive economic growth, these are all systemic problems, as we all know, with lots of root causes, right? So traditional solutions and best practices are really important in those cases, but I don't think they're sufficient. I really believe we have to come up with creative ideas to be successful in those areas. The second phrase I want to highlight is engage residents. This program is really grounded in the idea that people in closest proximity to the problem are closest to the solution. I love that, and I love that the program forces us to ask the question, how do we meet our residents where they are and engage them in solving problems together? That's really exciting to me. And so in that way, the program is as much about the process of engaging folks as it is about the solutions we come up with. We are one of 11 cities participating in the program this year. Other cities are focusing on challenges ranging from food deserts to small business support. But as the mayor mentioned, we are focused on housing affordability since that's such a critical challenge for our community. I've recruited a core team of 12 superstar city staff that I'm really excited about to participate in the program. I asked directors to nominate their best and brightest, folks who are creative problem solvers. And I think we have that group here. And we also know that to come up with innovative ideas, we need a really diverse group of perspectives at the table. So I recruited as diverse a group as possible. And I really do mean diverse in every sense of the word. We have folks from 10 different departments. So it's not just a team of the city's housing experts here. There are folks with different types of jobs and levels of seniority. You can see librarians and analysts and even the director of our Office of Community Engagement. There are folks with different income levels and ages, folks who live in different parts of the city and have different lived experiences. So I'm really excited about this team and already really impressed with the smarts and creativity they have. The program uses a design-based innovation approach, which builds on some of the great work I think the city is already doing to engage the public. So under this approach, rather than making residents come to us in formal meetings to talk about challenges, in this approach, we go to them and interact with them in their homes and workplaces. And rather than pulling together our internal subject matter experts, trying to find one best solution and waiting to launch it until it's perfect, this is really about making things quickly and then testing and iterating until we get it right. And you'll see here the innovation framework that we're using as part of this program to guide our work. There are 3 phases there. Phase 1, which is that kind of red circle, is understanding the problem. So this is where we are now through the end of March. We're interviewing lots of stakeholders with a special focus on hearing from underrepresented communities and doing lots of other research and literature reviews, et cetera. Then in phase 2, starting in April, that's when we'll start actually generating new ideas for solutions and then testing and iterating on that until we feel like we're in a good place to make sure that they'll be successful. And then in phase 3 is when we deliver initiatives. So it's in that phase that we would use the funds from the IBC to pilot and test one or more of the solutions from the group. So we would definitely come back to you all then with more information at that point. Next, I believe my colleague Leon Letson is on the call, and he's going to talk to you more about some examples from other cities who've participated in the program.
Yes, Madam Mayor, council members, Leon Letson. Hopefully you can see me. I'm not sure.
Yes, we can. Hi, Leon.
I'm a lot less Zoom familiar than I am Teams familiar. But yeah, so first off, great being a part of this team. Great being, I guess, the housing expert on the team that gets to talk about housing with folks who don't have to think of, who aren't thinking about this in the same way that I am every day. It's helped me, one, understand kind of where our community is and their understanding of housing, how these pieces fit together or aren't fitting together very well. So from that perspective, it's been a really personally great experience for me. And I also will highlight, you know, there are so many things we're doing on the housing front right now that this is just perfect timing for the innovation program. You know, one more tool, one more thing that we can layer on our efforts to solve problems in terms of housing affordability and housing supply. So to kind of demonstrate how this program works, we've provided some examples here from other cities that have participated in the past. And they've engaged in a variety of topics. None of these are necessarily housing focused so much as maybe St. Paul, Minnesota is to a certain extent. But I'll walk you through the Sioux Falls example to maybe explain the 3 phases that Kyle walked you through quickly at the beginning. So thank you, Kyle. So in the first phase, as we mentioned, this is the understand the problem phase. And honestly, for our group, that's where we are right now. And that's probably been our biggest challenge is, as Kyle mentioned before, everyone wants to immediately think of a solution the second some problems identified. And this program really asks you to dig in and understand and explore the problem to get to deeper triggers, deeper things that might be creating it before you jump to the solutions phase. I think the idea there being that oftentimes the quickest solution right out the gate probably isn't the best one. So this whole build, measure, learn approach is really reinforced through this effort. So in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, they were attempting to improve their public transit system. So in the phase that we are in right now, the understand the problem, the team actually rode the bus to understand the resident experience. Surprisingly, not a lot of those members of the team had actually ever ridden the public bus. So that was an important first step, is to understand the experience of the people they were trying to solve a problem for. As Kyle mentioned, what we'll be doing is interviewing a lot of folks engaged in housing or housing affordability. That was a part of this process as well. And then really continuing to reframe the problem and understanding all of the different pieces associated with it and seeing what the big moves could be in that process is really kind of what we do. And again, understanding the problem. And as I mentioned, our team is there probably for another month or 2. We'll see a timeline here at the end, but that's been a pretty interesting experience to walk through that with everyone here at the city. So next, generating and testing new ideas. So in Sioux Falls, they invited 40 residents to generate ideas with their team. Obviously, that was a pre-COVID experience. So we're figuring out how we're going to do that here. We thankfully have Maria with CE to kind of help us figure out engagement strategies that can work in our current times regarding COVID and all the other things. A big part of this is, as Kyle mentioned, you don't create the one perfect idea and move forward with it. You work through lots of small ideas and workshop them and see what really rises to the top. So in doing that, Sioux Falls developed a simple map outlining new transit ideas. They allowed their residents to interact with the map and provide feedback. They learned residents didn't want to transfer during bus trips. They continued to refine the idea, and they built a mock-up of a mobile application to test their residents. So next slide. So finally, once they kind of worked through some of those ideas, they conducted financial analysis. $200,000 was allocated in Sioux Falls to implement the project. Obviously, identified partners, and what ultimately resulted out of Sioux Falls was an on-demand public transit system, which was kind of a game changer for them. And just personally reading about it this morning, it sounds like it's been pretty successful. Again, considering everything happening with public transit during the time of COVID, they have seen some impressive results out of this program. So in terms of the timeline, as I mentioned before, we're really in that understand the problem phase, probably for another 2 months roughly. We're currently between scheduling interviews with stakeholders, other folks close to the problem, engaged in housing, and doing a lot of research. So some of the research we're doing there is looking at all of the past conversations the city's had regarding housing, back to even the community conversations on growth. I think there's some important stuff there that our team is reviewing again to understand what some of the perceptions are regarding housing, some of the concerns. And then we simultaneously have a lot going on with community development analysis that was recently completed by Vitruvian for housing and community development, and there's some follow-up efforts going into that in terms of housing gaps analysis and different things like that, obstacles to housing. And then we also have the CSH study, which is forthcoming, that's taking a more in-depth look at supportive housing. So our team is engaged in researching all of the efforts going into that. April through July, again, we'll be generating and testing those new ideas, and then look to bring some initiatives forth to City Council in July and August. We'll obviously be circling back to update you as we go through this process. And many of you will probably be a part of the conversation in terms of the stakeholder interviews that we have. And I think that's our last slide.
Yep, that's it.
So yeah, with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Sure, let me go with Councilman Halliburton first, and then we'll go with Council President Pro Tem.
Thank you. Maybe for Kyle or Leon, either one, feel free to jump in. In that sort of in-depth research area, I'm just curious if you've found any unique ways or opportunities or seen any success in reaching some of our underrepresented and communities that aren't able to engage as much as that we would typically love to see them engage. And I don't know if this has given you any opportunities to engage with them more, and if there's any ways that we can kind of duplicate those efforts into other things the city can do.
I'll take that question, Madam Mayor, Council Member. We are at the very beginning of that stakeholder interview phase, so I won't pretend like we found any silver bullet yet, but I do think the critical piece is, rather than forcing folks to come to us in a community environment, how can we go to them and talk to them in an environment they feel comfortable in, whether it's their home or their workplace, or in times like this, maybe it's still Zoom. But being able to have that kind of one-on-one conversation with folks is a very different environment than having folks come to a community conversation or a listening session where they might not get heard. And so I think that will be critical. But of course, we're engaging in some of the same kind of tactics we have in other areas, where trying to connect with folks through trusted community members, through community organizations as a way to chat with those folks. Of course, we have to be careful too, right? Because for a lot of folks who may have had, are experiencing housing instability, may have had a lot of trauma in their past, seeking them out to talk about their experience may not be the most trauma-informed response, right? So we're trying to really be careful about how we do that as well, so that folks feel comfortable telling their story in a safe environment.
And Madam Mayor, just quick follow-up.
Sure.
Yeah, Kyle, thanks so much for that explanation. One of the things that I'm excited about with this whole project is to see what efforts can be duplicated in the other things that we do at the city beyond housing. And so I'll be really interested to see what sort of success and what sort of strategies come out of that engagement and communication process with our our community members, because that definitely seems like something that we can do across the board. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, I think that's a really great point, and that's one of the reasons why we intentionally selected members of this core team from across city departments. The hope is that they can learn some of these techniques and bring them back to the work that they're doing, right? So this may not be about recycling, but when we launch a new recycling program, right, we have somebody who knows these skills and can kind of approach that problem in that way.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Leon. So one of the things that I thought was really wonderful about our census work last year was that we cultivated those relationships with many folks in typically underrepresented communities within Boise. It would be great if we could reach out to those folks. We had community engagement do a really great job of cultivating those relationships. And I know that at least one of those individuals who was working with the Canvas team is helping with Public Works and helping them do outreach to underrepresented folks in the Latinx community. One thing that I don't think we talk a lot about when it comes to housing is housing discrimination. And I'm wondering if we can make sure that we include that in the work that you're doing on affordable housing. One of my past lives was working with the Intermountain Fair Housing Council as an educator and also as a fair housing tester. And I have to tell you, being a fair housing tester is one of the most painful experiences I've ever had in my life because people don't discriminate in the ways that we would think. They do it with a smile, they're very nice. But then when you look at the data and you realize, oh, this person denied me housing, and the proof is there, there's no denying it, even though they were very nice when they did it. So I think it would be important to make sure that we have connections with the Intermountain Fair Housing Council to make sure that we are taking that into consideration as well.
Madam Mayor, Council.
First, I appreciate, Kyle, what you said earlier about, talking to folks about the trauma that they've experienced in their housing. I am one of those people, and I would be happy to be available to help with that because the reality is, difficult, challenging things happen to us, and the only thing that would make it worse is to not use that experience to help make things better, which is what myself and a lot of folks have chosen to do. So I'd be happy to mind that in service to our community.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, I'm so glad you said that because I believe you are on our list of stakeholders. So somebody will be reaching out to you on that front. And I think it's a really great point about building on some of the successes we've had with the census outreach and leveraging those relationships and partnerships for this. And so we'll be looking to do that as well.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. This is great discussion. I'm happy to hear more about this initiative. Really happy to hear about an initiative that's focused on finding folks where they are, who are the ones who can benefit from whatever actions we take. We often hear from folks who think they're going to be impacted by it, but we don't often hear from the folks who might benefit from action. So this is, I think, a really important step. Question, I didn't hear you talk about the private sector and how they're going to be engaged in this. And I ask because I think that this is a problem that's way too big for government in general, but especially a city like the city of Boise to solve by ourselves. So I'm assuming that part of the engagement will include private sector, but developers, but wonder if you could expound on that a bit.
Madam Mayor, Council President, and maybe I feel like I'm doing all the talking. I can let Leon take one, but I'll say definitely, we're looking at engaging different stakeholder groups. And some of those will include folks like developers who are doing this work and others who are interested in this work, not just kind of those folks experiencing housing instability. I think it's a great point, but I'll defer to Leon.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, yes. I think similar to other efforts along housing with the Land Trust and the Initiatives program, we're trying to get those developers off the sideline that maybe haven't engaged in the topic. as much. So certainly we want to, we will be engaging with affordable housing developers, but those also who, maybe again, have never really touched housing affordability. And interestingly enough, there's a bit of optimism here on a Tuesday morning, but I'm experiencing the sense of altruism in the development community where a lot of folks are starting to realize like, okay, I'm profiting a lot off of housing in this community, and what role can I play to help the bigger picture? So I think we've kind of got this interesting spirit in the community right now that I hope this program and other efforts can capture. I think it's a perfect time to have that conversation. So.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the folks that you're engaging with, specifically, we are including renters, correct?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, yes, that's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kyle and Leon. Looks like we don't have any other questions or comments. I look forward to hearing more as this progresses.
Thank you.
And next up, I see Steve Hubble. Is it just you, Steve, or is it also Steve Burgos? I think I might have seen Burgos as well. Here to talk about our Climate Action Division and the different work that's underway or being planned to be underway.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take it from here. I'll get the slides up. It's really nice to see everyone, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here today and give you all an update on our climate action initiatives. Thought it would be good to start this morning with just some brief background on the formation of the Climate Action Division. As you all are aware, our team was formed last fall to work together with mayor and council to develop and frame climate policies, to lead implementation of our climate action and greenhouse gas emissions reductions, to carry forward our prior work on energy policy and programs, to work on related programs like sustainability and air quality that have now been moved into and are part of the division, and then to measure and track progress through climate and energy data and metrics. Additionally, the division helps coordinate with all of our departments and external stakeholders on climate action implementation. And then we support the range of other climate-related programs across the city, some of which I'll touch on in the next slide here. Wanted to start with a few recent highlights before we moved into a project update. We're seeing good trends in our work to reduce the city's carbon footprint. In looking at our municipal greenhouse gas emissions inventory, we note a 16% reduction from 2015 down to 2018. And we'll touch a little more on those inventories in the subsequent slides. But that downward trend is a good indication. There may be some year-to-year fluctuations as we go forward, but certainly all in all, I think we're headed in the right direction there. And some of the items that are contributing to that come from a wide range of programs across the city, and perhaps not those that we might think of as typically climate action. First, with materials management, wanted to note in 2020 a 41% residential diversion rate for compost and recycling. Our residents' participation in those programs have a direct impact on reducing emissions that come from the materials that we take to the landfill. Next, with water renewal, certainly council is very aware of the amount of work around climate change and climate action that went into the utility and water renewal planning process. And I think that'll serve as an example for similar planning processes going forward. There's also been significant work around electrification, both in buildings and in vehicles. Recently, the police micro district building was remodeled, and the decision was made to have that building be all electric to serve as a pilot potentially for other city facility remodels or new construction. And then additionally, Republic Services, the city's refuse hauler, will be in the process of deploying as many as 10 electric trash trucks over the next 1 to 2 years. Once these are all on the ground, this will be about 15% of their fleet that's out and about any given day collecting trash, recycling, and compost. So that is certainly an exciting development and will help to, I think, promote fleet electrification in those large type vehicles in other private public sector entities. And then finally, wanted to note the important work of the City of Trees Challenge. Those tree plantings ultimately will have a direct effect on sequestering carbon throughout our community, promoting shade to help with things like energy efficiency and reducing urban heat island throughout the city. The next couple slides provide an overview of some projects that we have happening in climate, energy, and other related topics. But first, certainly wanted to touch on one that's very important to our division, and that's the creation of our climate action roadmap. We've been working on the roadmap since the early fall and are getting ready to close in on a draft for consideration. That's being reviewed by staff currently, and we'll work to get that rolled out and get some community feedback on it probably in late February or early March. That roadmap will really help guide the work that we do going forward in the near term and long term, and likely establish a carbon neutrality goal for the community. In addition to that community facing work, we're also starting work on mapping that out for our emissions within the municipal government as well. We'll work on that through this year and anticipate having that completed in the summertime. Another project that's active currently is what was previously referred to as the Environmental Justice, Community Health, and Equity Baseline. We're tentatively calling that the Clean City Index. And that is an effort to help understand baseline conditions around those issues across the city, and then help prioritize specifically with respect to climate action implementation, particular parts of the city that might benefit from, for example, tree planting or targeted energy efficiency programs, or many of the various activities that we might do related to climate action or potentially other city services. I mentioned previously greenhouse gas emissions inventories. The city has historically developed those for both the community and our municipal operations on a 5-year interval, starting back in 2000. Starting in 2018, we've worked to update those on an annual basis going forward. Our 2018 inventories are complete and have been publicly released for the first time, so those are out and available for the community to review. We're closing in on the completion of 2019. And then as data comes in across this year, we'll look to release the 2020 inventory probably sometime later this fall or early winter. Additionally, we've got a number of projects happening related to the implementation of Boise's Energy Future. As Mayor and Council remember, the city adopted that plan in 2019 and the associated goals for clean electricity that came along with it. So we've been working actively in a number of areas. First, to increase energy efficiency program participation across the community from residents and businesses. The first set of data that we have in for 2019 from Idaho Power is showing a good participation across the city in those programs. So we're excited to see that continue and hopefully increase that going forward. We've also been active in discussions around renewable energy procurement, looking at opportunities for the city as a customer or other large energy users, or even small energy users at the household level, to have a different opportunity to procure renewable electricity from the utility provider, modeling that work on efforts that have happened in other states and with other utilities. Related to that, we're very active with the Public Utilities Commission, ensuring our involvement in various cases that deal with energy efficiency or renewable energy, making sure the city's perspectives are provided in those proceedings, and hopefully ensuring outcomes that benefit our goals and strategies that are identified in Boise's energy future. The thermal energy strategy, council may recall when Boise's energy future was adopted, we set very clear and numeric goals for electricity, but on our thermal energy side with our natural gas and geothermal, the planning and goal setting was not as detailed. And when that came to council for approval, you all directed staff to take a harder look at that a little more quickly than we had anticipated. So we are and have embarked on that thermal energy strategy. Again, that's a first half of this year project. So we'll certainly keep you all up to speed as we make progress there, but likely looking to come back sometime this summer with some additional details there. And then a new program for this year in the budget was energy and water efficiency for vulnerable communities. We're just getting started with that effort, so certainly more to come there, but wanted to mention that as it was a budget priority for the year. And then specifically to today's discussion as it relates to budgeting and the end of year funding that was provided a few weeks ago. As we think about moving our municipal operations towards carbon neutrality, we use that emissions inventory that you see on the right here as a guide. A significant majority of our emissions come from the electricity that we use in our buildings and our water renewal facilities. And we know with the work that we've done in Boise's energy future, we're on a good path to move towards 100% clean electricity. So that shifts our focus to moving the other energy sources that we use in our building and our fleet vehicles to electricity or other clean sources. We're currently analyzing a group of our buildings to determine the feasibility of shifting their energy use to all electric while incorporating opportunities to make them more efficient. And then additionally, we're also evaluating opportunities within the motor pool, which are the vehicles that you see downstairs when you come and go in the basement, to convert them to electric vehicles where appropriate. Given the sort of periodic use of a lot of those vehicles and short distance nature of the trips, a lot of those will be well suited to converting to the types of electric vehicles that are available currently. So we're coordinating with fleet services to take a look at that and see what opportunities exist and what might be able to be funded with the end of year funds that were provided. In addition, we'll also be looking at any necessary charging infrastructure. Of course, that will have to be incorporated along to accommodate the addition of those vehicles. Certainly want to appreciate the end of year funding that was provided. That almost tripled the available budget that we had to start with in FY21. So we're certainly excited to finish these analysis and evaluations for the buildings, for the fleet vehicles, and then update council accordingly about where we might be headed with those particular projects as we progress through the end of the year. We'll also anticipate being back soon with more updates and details on the climate action roadmap, and look forward to sharing those with you all. And that comes to the end of my slides, so I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Steve, thank you so much. Is our greenhouse gas inventory publicly available right now?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Bajent, yes, currently the 2015 and 2018 inventories and a comparison of the two are posted on the city website.
Thank you. If I can quickly follow up. When we passed the budget last summer, we had a few things that we directed or suggested or asked, and based on this presentation, you've hit them all. It's amazing. Thank you so much. I know a lot of people really cared about that and had a lot of conversations with us privately about that. You made a commitment last summer. and you've delivered on it. It looks like there'll be one more update later this spring, but other than that, you've quietly gone out and done that work, and I'm very appreciative.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, thank you. We're excited to have the opportunity to work on these projects, and certainly a lot here, but also a lot more to go, and we're looking forward to it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Council President.
thank you. Steve, like Councilmember Bajent, I want to congratulate you on how much you guys have gotten done recently. It's great to see so much progress so quickly. As I looked at your pie chart, it was obvious that our next two areas where we're likely to make the biggest impact would be public works facilities and various government buildings. And just wondered if you, given the progress to date, if you've begun, we know that we have a strategy in public works, given our recent public works presentation and how they're going to go forward in really updating their facilities, especially the wastewater renewal facilities. Do we have a strategy yet for taking a deeper dive into government buildings other than trying to electrify? It seems like there are other opportunities that we might pursue if we wanted to, and maybe identify what are the highest use energy buildings and put them in a different category, and then the ones that maybe are lower use, but there's pretty easy strategies that we could implement and try to bite those off. Just wondered if you've begun to develop a strategy on that.
Sure, Madam Mayor, Council President. We've, I think historically a lot of our work in our government buildings was focused around efficiency. I think certainly recently those discussions have shifted a little bit towards electrification, but I think there's certainly an opportunity to merge those two areas as we go forward. And as you recall back a couple of slides, for me, both the municipal climate action roadmap and the thermal energy strategy, I think have pieces of some of the questions that you're getting at there, and will provide an opportunity, I think, to lay out what those strategies are in a little more detail and to bring those back and have council give us confirmation and direction on what the concepts and paths forward there in those areas are.
Thank you. Follow up, if I may. So Steve, early on, we began through Energize Our Neighborhoods to do some community education around energy efficiency and a little bit around electrification, but mostly around energy efficiency. It seems to me as we go forward, not only are those buildings a big piece of our portfolio in terms of energy use, they're certainly a big piece in terms of the rest of the community as well, especially existing buildings. So as we go forward, it would be good as you develop this strategy to also develop a strategy of how to share what we learn with our community members, but also perhaps develop a strategy to encourage or incent them to also get on board in terms of some of the improvements that could be made to lower their own energy use.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, or Council President, thank you for those comments. One thing I didn't mention in the slide is Council also prioritized the hiring of an energy program manager with the FY21 budget. I'm really excited to report that our manager started yesterday, certainly both on a professional and a personal level in terms of capacity for our team. And certainly there's a ton of opportunity to share both the availability of existing efficiency programs that our utilities offer, certainly case studies in our own facilities. And I appreciate the acknowledgement of our facilities as significant energy users in the community. Just for council's reference, our facilities collectively use about 2% of the electricity in the entire city. So it doesn't sound significant, but when you think about the vast number of accounts it is. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to lead by example and then share that knowledge and information with the community to hopefully encourage their participation as well.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Steve, thank you so much for providing this great information. I just wanted to thank you for truly committing to learning as much as you can about the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion as you do this work by being a part of our steering committee as we put together our strategic plan for DEI and how it will be implemented throughout the organization. I'm wondering, when it comes to the project Environmental Justice, Community Health, and Equity, the baseline for the Clean City Index, is there a way to be inclusive in terms of folks who are at our lower income levels? I'm thinking in terms of, the brown water issue that we have up on the bench. I mean, that's something that's been brought to our attention for quite some time. And I think folks looking from the outside in wonder why that's still an issue. And perhaps is it because people who live in that particular part of our city are not viewed as being at a particularly high socioeconomic level? And when those things are brought to our attention, how do we provide that support to our constituents so that they know that it is a priority for us and that we are working on it? And I'm just wondering, if that is part of that discussion.
Madam Mayor, Council Member Sanchez, thank you for that question. So what we're looking to do with the Environmental Justice Baseline / Clean City Index is start to identify on a geographic basis where some of our issues might exist around environmental justice, around equity, around community health. And certainly I want to acknowledge the work that's been done previous to our current efforts with Energize, with some of the work that's been done in housing and community development. What we're looking to do is sort of build on and supplement that work, kind of specific in some ways to the environmental justice question, which hasn't been specifically evaluated in the past, and maybe without commenting specifically particularly on those issues that you raised. I think certainly the index gives us a toolkit in going forward with programming or with outreach or with community engagement to touch and reach those communities that might have been historically underrepresented, or to address those types of environmental justice challenges in perhaps a more forward-facing manner than they have been in the past.
Thank you, Steve. Just a quick follow-up, Madam Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I know as somebody who comes from a low-income background is there isn't an appreciation for the conservation type efforts that poor people do just because of survival. And I know that's something that I've seen missing from that movement is an inclusive approach to that. Not all of us are going to have electric cars, that sort of thing. But just because of the nature of the way we move through this life at that socioeconomic level, we have to be wise with our resources. And I know I would like to see recognition of that, recognition that there are folks who do engage in that type of behavior out of necessity, but I don't know that it has the same value when we think of conservation efforts at a higher level. And if there's a way that we can be inclusive in the way we acknowledge that work of folks who are doing it at a very basic level, but it is conservation work. I know for myself, I was happy to learn that my personal hero, Dolores Huerta, who is most well known for her works in advocating for farm workers, but her efforts in the conservation movement began with conserving the people and protecting people from being exposed to pesticides. And the conservation movement that I recognize seems to be focused on the food that's covered in pesticides. So that's an example of where I would like to see us be inclusive in the way we talk about these conservation efforts, that it does include people at all socioeconomic levels. So thank you, Steve, for your efforts.
Madam Mayor, Council Member Sanchez, appreciate those comments and, have enjoyed having some of those conversations with you in the DEI initiatives. I think I just mentioned a couple things in response to that. First, as we convene with our peers nationally across cities, the discussion in a lot of ways in the last year has pivoted from sort of the technical climate and energy issues that we typically discuss to conversations around equity, conversations around reaching frontline communities. So we're certainly listening and learning and have a lot to learn and a lot of opportunity there. I also wanted to mention, just from a staffing perspective, in addition to the energy program manager, the community engagement team also recently brought on a climate communications coordinator to help support our climate efforts, to help us technical folks talk better to the community. So we're certainly excited to see how that staff can help supplement our work and help us with the goal of reaching those frontline communities and the folks that you mentioned.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Steve, I'll reiterate the congratulations on, the accomplishments and the thankfulness for all the hard work done. And then, thankfulness for listening to Council President Pro Tem Sanchez and some of those requests. Sometimes I think language is such a big deal in how we talk and the words that we use. One of the things I saw on the chart that you had on the last slide there, I think it was 8% for, was it employee commuting? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm just a little curious about that statistic, and if that's something that we're looking at from year to year, if that was 2020, during COVID when there wasn't as much remote commuting, and how significant is that 8% when looking at this total effort?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, appreciate the technical question. Love to take a deep dive into our emissions inventory. So we source those numbers from a variety of different factors, primarily from approved protocols that a lot of cities around the country use. That particular data point for Boise has been gleaned the past couple years from a study that was done of how staff commutes to work. It's a few years old, so it likely needs some updating, but that's how that data point is being generated. And certainly that's something we'll discuss internally. I think previously that was an HR effort to roll out that study and certainly look at how that might have changed. And I think certainly given the events of the last year, what telework might look like going forward could influence that as well.
Perfect, Steve. Thanks for that answer.
All right. Well, it looks like everybody's had their questions or comments made. I just want to say this, we're going to move into an executive session next, but if I didn't have to have a mask on, you would have seen me in all of these presentations really smiling, because this last year has been rough on the community, rough on our staff, but really appreciate that with the team of people that we have at the City of Boise and in partnership with all of you as council members in the community, that we've been able to stay focused on the priorities that we brought last year at this time that we said were our priorities around housing, climate innovation, economic development, community support, and of course, addressing investments around the city and parks. And so thanks to the staff for making all of this happen this last year, for council support from a budgeting perspective, and then look forward to hearing more, of course, as the year progresses. And with that, we've probably got an executive session motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss land acquisition and pending litigation pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206, subsections 1C and 1F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thanks all. Our executive session, you probably have already seen that the teams have started. So Lisa and I both need to move into other offices and then we'll join you.